what is your deepest concern, and what might be the good news too?
So good evening, and thank you for including me in this important conversation. So you're quite right in pointing out that none of us can speak with any authority as to the circumstances that DAMAR finds himself in. But there is something here that's really important for us to flesh out. And this is what Will was just talking about. I want to just unpack that for a second. Will used the turn of phrase commotio cordis. It's a derivative that means commotion or unordered activity in the heart. And it turns out to be the case that when trauma occurs, blunt trauma, that means non-penetrating trauma, at just the right time in the cardiac cycle, in just the right location in the chest wall, heart rhythms can be interrupted, and a very disastrous rhythm called ventricular fibrillation can actually be provoked. This is something that was first identified in the cardiology literature in the 1980s, and it is something which you do see, for example, as you pointed out, in baseball, in lacrosse, in soccer. And so this blunt trauma to the chest, when it just happens in exactly the right circumstances, provokes a rhythm disturbance, which is very often an end-of-life event. It was also pointed out by an earlier commentator that the rapid resorting to defibrillators, meaning shocking the heart, is the single thing that is essential in the care of these patients. So the prognosis, how likely one is to do well after this event, relates to that single variable. How long did it take us to recognize that this was the problem and to deliver that energy to the chest wall? Remember, we're talking about, as was also pointed out, a healthy young man who doubtless has been extensively screened, is a consummately trained athlete. So it's not the first, second, or third thing on anyone's mind caring for him that, oh, here is a disastrous heart rhythm disturbance. But it may well be, and again, this is not with any knowledge as to what's happening now in Cincinnati, but it very well may be that what happened tragically to this young man is commotio cordis.
Now, doctor, I mean, these if you play safety in the NFL, you're involved and engaged in hits all the time. This one didn't appear to be particularly violent. It was, by all accounts, a legal hit. It wasn't unnecessary targeting. This is, as you pointed out, and anybody, it's just obvious that if you play safety in the NFL, you're a very fit human being. So it's just hitting that one spot at just the wrong time that brings this on. And again, we don't know that this is what happened to DAMAR Hamlin, but if it was, I mean, it's just hard to believe after, I mean, he played college football, he played in the NFL for 2 years. He takes hits like this all the time.
So, you know, the intuition that you point out is so spot on. You think to yourself, how could a rather underpowered hit like this result in a catastrophe as opposed to the dramatic hits that we see where people kind of shake it off and walk back to the huddle? But the key thing for our listeners to get a sense of is that when the chest is impacted by a baseball or by a soccer ball or by a fist at the karate school or here by a helmet, in a certain space, in the fifth intercostal space, about 2/3 of the way down the chest, and with actually not a violent hit, but a thump, just like if, heaven forbid, you saw someone on the street and you thought they were having a heart attack, you would thump them, because that thump creates an electromechanical wavefront that can affect heart rhythm activity. And here, if this is correct, what happened, what could have happened, is that impact, as underpowered as you point out it was delivered at just exactly the right place and time meaning in the cardiac cycle, where the heart's a little bit vulnerable. So when that electromechanical wavefront impacts the heart, the rhythm can become chaotic and disordered. And
Doctor,
one of the things that, yes, sir.
Doctor, I want to thank you for your analysis here. We have to continue on. Fox News is going to continue its coverage here. But, of course, we're talking about DAMAR Hamlin, who was playing for the Buffalo Bills against the Cincinnati Bengals. It was a Monday night game. He collapsed. CPR was administered, and the last we heard from the NFL, he was in critical condition in a local Cincinnati hospital. You see the prayers there that are being offered on the field, the medical attention that was going on. Stay with us here at Fox News. We're going to continue to cover this